You see, there's something fascinating about the way our minds work when it comes to emotional memory, especially men's minds. People often assume that if someone walks away or doesn't reach out, it means they've forgotten you, that you didn't mean as much. But the truth is often the opposite. Just because someone isn't saying your name doesn't mean they're not thinking about you. Because when a woman triggers a real emotional experience in a man, something shifts. It's not logical, it's not controllable, and it's definitely not forgettable. Think about it. We don't remember everyone we meet. We don't even remember every person we date, but we do remember how someone made us feel. And when a woman comes along who makes him feel something that's rare, something he hasn't quite felt before, or maybe hasn't felt in a long time, that becomes imprinted in his emotional memory. He may not consciously sit around reminiscing every day, but there are moments, random ones, when something reminds him and it all comes flooding back. That one laugh you had together in the car, the way you challenged him in a conversation, not in a combative way, but in a way that woke him up, the way you looked at him when he was vulnerable and didn't judge him for it, didn't try to fix him, didn't shame him, just saw him. Those moments matter more than you realize. Because we live in a world where most people are trying to be liked, they try to impress, they try to be agreeable. But when a woman shows up as herself, authentic, warm, confident and emotionally present, it creates a contrast so sharp, so undeniable that it sticks. It's not about being perfect, it's about being real. It's about being that woman who's not afraid to show her standards, who's comfortable in silence, who doesn't overgive to prove her worth. A woman who knows that her presence is enough. That kind of woman is like a breath of fresh air to a man who's used to surface level connection. And when he experiences that, something inside him starts to shift, even if he's not ready to admit it. And here's where it gets even more interesting. Most men don't know how rare that feeling is until they try to find it again. They'll go back into the dating world, swipe through profiles, go on dates, and keep looking for that spark they felt with you. And when it doesn't come, not in the same way, not with the same depth, they start to realize that what they had wasn't ordinary, it wasn't replaceable. That's when the forgetting becomes impossible, because now he's not just remembering you, he's remembering the version of himself that existed when he was with you, the way he felt, the way he behaved, the way you made him believe in something more than just physical attraction or playful banter. That's what gets under the skin. That's what lingers. Because when a man feels emotionally safe and attracted at the same time, it creates an imprint that doesn't fade just because time passes. He could be with someone else. He could be busy. He could be trying to move on. But that doesn't mean his mind won't drift back to that one conversation at 2:00 a.m., that road trip you took, that moment when you touched his hand and everything just slowed down. And here's the paradox. Even if he's the one who walked away, even if he ghosted or went cold or said, "I'm not ready for something serious," that doesn't mean the feelings weren't real. Some men leave, not because they feel nothing, but because they feel too much. And they're not emotionally equipped to handle it. That's not your fault. It's not a reflection of your value. In fact, the intensity of what he felt might be why he distanced himself. Because let's be honest, when you're used to shallow connections, real connection can be terrifying. It demands vulnerability. It demands honesty. It demands that a man level up. And if he's not there yet, he runs. Even in his running, even in his silence, he doesn't forget. His mind won't let him. Because real emotional impact doesn't disappear. It waits. It sits in the quiet. It shows up when he least expects it. When he hears a song or watches a movie or finds himself laughing at something you once said. And in that moment, he's transported not to some idealized fantasy, but to you, to the very real, tangible feeling of being understood, of being seen, of being drawn out of his shell without being pushed. That's what keeps replaying in his head. So if you're sitting there wondering whether he ever thinks of you, if he remembers, if he felt what you felt, I want you to know this. If you triggered a real emotional experience in him, he can't forget. Even if he's trying, even if he tells himself he's over it, even if he tells others he's moved on, some part of him knows what he lost. And that's not something you need to chase or remind him of or prove. Just trust that the impact you made, the one rooted in authenticity and presence, in emotional depth, already did the work for you. And if you were unforgettable, he already knows. You know, it's interesting. It's not always the loudest, most dramatic relationships that linger in someone's mind. It's often the ones that had a quiet kind of intrigue, a subtle pull. And that brings me to something a lot of people overlook when they're trying to understand why they can't stop thinking about someone or why someone else can't seem to forget them. Sometimes it's the mystery that creates memory. Now, I don't mean mystery in the sense of playing games or hiding who you are. That's not what this is about. Real mystery comes from being authentically layered. It's about being someone who doesn't immediately lay everything on the table, someone who has depth, who reveals themselves gradually, not because they're withholding, but because who they are simply can't be understood in a single conversation or a couple of weeks. You see, when a guy meets someone who's emotionally complex, someone who has her own life, her own passions, her own inner world, he doesn't just experience her, he becomes curious. And curiosity is one of the most powerful emotional hooks in the world. When you spark a man's curiosity, not through tricks, but by genuinely being someone with substance, his mind keeps looping back to you because it's not finished. It hasn't figured you out yet. That's the mistake so many people make in early dating. They feel this pressure to show their whole hand, to prove they're worth choosing by listing everything they are, everything they can offer, everything they've been through. But what happens then? It removes all the tension. It removes the slow reveal. And once someone feels like they already know everything there is to know about you, the intrigue starts to fade, even if you're amazing. But if instead you're someone who brings presence, kindness, and honesty while still leaving space for discovery, you create an experience that lingers. You become the kind of person who, even after the conversations are over, his mind keeps revisiting. Maybe the way you phrase something or a small moment that didn't even seem significant at the time, but now it feels like a thread he wants to pull on. And that's the thing. When a man can't fully explain why he's thinking about you, he just keeps thinking about you. Because let's be honest, there are people we meet who are lovely, compatible, sweet, but they don't ignite that deeper curiosity. And it's not because they're not good enough. It's just that the interaction felt a little too surface level, a little too easy to define. And once we define something too quickly, we move on. Now, contrast that with someone who doesn't need to fill every silence, who doesn't try to impress you with their resume of traits, but who shows up as herself, grounded, warm, and a little bit elusive. That woman, that energy sticks. She's not trying to get a reaction. She's not trying to rush connection. She's allowing the connection to build at its natural pace. And what that does is this: it gives a man the space to fall in love with discovering you. We forget the part of real connection isn't just compatibility, it's discovery. And when you allow someone to discover you slowly, they value each piece of the puzzle more because they had to pay attention. They had to stay engaged. They had to earn access to those deeper parts of you. And guess what? We value what we earn. So even if things didn't work out with you and him, even if life pulled you in different directions or he wasn't ready or the timing was off, your energy, your presence, the intrigue of who you are, it doesn't just vanish. It lingers. It replays. And he might try to distract himself. He might try to date other people. But if he doesn't find that same slow burning mystery, the sense that he's still learning, still uncovering, he'll notice. He might not be able to name it, but he'll feel that something's missing. Because once someone has felt that kind of emotional gravity, that quiet magnetism, you can't just forget it, especially when it wasn't born from effort or manipulation, but from truth, from depth, from someone simply being who they are without the need to be understood all at once. And maybe that's what's happening right now. Maybe he's out there trying to move on, trying to forget, but he can't because something about you didn't give him all the answers. You left a question in his mind, a story that didn't get to the last chapter. And now, even if he's pretending otherwise, his mind is still searching for the missing pages. That's the kind of impact you make when you live with depth and quiet confidence. And it's why, even when he tries, his mind won't let him forget you. Even if the relationship wasn't right for him at the time, that doesn't mean your presence didn't shake something awake inside him. Timing is such an overlooked factor when we talk about love. People like to romanticize this idea that if two people are meant to be together, they'll find a way no matter what. And sure, that sounds poetic, but real life is messier than that. Sometimes people meet the right person at the wrong time, and that can be even more haunting than never meeting at all. When a man meets someone who genuinely connects with him, someone who challenges him, inspires him, lights up the room in a way he didn't even know he was looking for, but he's not ready. It creates this internal conflict. He knows on some level that what he's experiencing is rare, but maybe he's still figuring himself out. Maybe he's chasing other priorities. Maybe he hasn't healed from his past or hasn't grown into the kind of man who can sustain a healthy, intimate relationship. And so what does he do? He lets her go. But here's a truth no one talks about. Letting go doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean it didn't matter. It means he wasn't in the right place to appreciate it. And that stays with him. Time goes on. Life happens. He dates other people, throws himself into work, maybe even convinces himself that he's moved on. But every now and then, unexpectedly, something brings her back. It could be a smell, a song, a phrase she used to say, a memory that sneaks in while he's standing in line for coffee or driving home late at night. He'll remember how she made him feel, how she looked at him like she saw something deeper, not who he was, but who he could be. And in that moment, his chest tightens because he realizes it wasn't the timing that made her special, it was her. And even if the timing was off, the connection was real. It's like a bookmark in his life. He might move on to other chapters, but that page where she existed never fully closes. It's there, marked, undeniable. Because while he may have justified walking away back then, told himself he wasn't ready or that things were too complicated, he's now starting to wonder if what he really wasn't ready for was growth, was intimacy, was someone who demanded more from him just by being herself. Thanks for reading that. And if that's the kind of woman you were, you didn't need to scream for attention or beg him to stay. You walked with dignity. You left space, not silence. You didn't try to convince him of your worth. You embodied it. And that right there is what lingers in his mind, because he didn't lose someone who was desperate to be loved by him. He lost someone who already loved herself. You see, when a man walks away from someone extraordinary, it doesn't just affect the heart. It affects the mind. It plants seeds of doubt, regret. He starts to measure new experiences against something that felt authentic, something that caught him off guard in the best way. And as much as he might try to push it down or bury it under distractions, that memory comes back when he least expects it. Because we don't forget people who awaken something within us, especially not when we weren't ready to receive it. That's what makes your impact so powerful. Not that you stayed, but that you showed him what was possible and then walked away when he wasn't ready to rise to meet it. You became the contrast, the before and after moment, the moment he'll keep looking back at, not because you made him feel comfortable, but because you made him feel alive. And when the dust settles and life slows down, he'll realize that not all timing is created equal. Sometimes the right person shows up to reveal something, not to stay. And the ache he feels, that's the part of him that knows he let go of something real. He may have tried to move on, but his mind won't let him forget. If you saw him in a way he hasn't yet learned to see himself, believed in him, challenged him, or made him feel capable of more, he will keep circling back mentally. Because in losing you, he didn't just lose a person, he lost the version of himself he was becoming around you. And that right there is something that sticks. See, most people go through life being perceived a certain way. They're used to being understood through surface labels, what they do for work, how they look, how much money they make, what kind of jokes they tell at parties. They get slotted into boxes. And whether it's ego or just routine, most of the time they accept it. They live there. But then someone comes along and doesn't just see the boxes, they see between them. You saw him not just for who he was, but who he could be. You spoke to that part of him that maybe he hadn't even given much attention to yet. Maybe he had dreams he wasn't chasing, insecurities he was hiding behind bravado, potential that was gathering dust because no one had called it out, and you did. Maybe you didn't say it outright. Maybe it wasn't you could be this or that. Maybe it was in the way you asked him about what made him feel alive. The way you looked at him when he talked about the things he cared about. The way you didn't tolerate his excuses, you didn't coddle his laziness or stroke his ego, you inspired something better. That energy, it's rare. Most people either inflate a person to avoid conflict or tear them down to feel bigger. But what you did, you struck that perfect balance of support and standard. You didn't fall for the polished surface. You engaged with the core. You challenged him. You encouraged his greatness, not his comfort. And that kind of presence does not go unnoticed. What happens when a man meets someone like that, someone who sees beyond his current state and believes in the man he could be, is that a mirror gets held up. And not just any mirror, a mirror that reflects a higher version of himself. A mirror that makes him ask, what if that really is me? What if I am capable of more? It ignites something. But here's the twist. Once that reflection is gone, it's not easy to forget. Because the version of him he saw in your presence, that more motivated, more grounded, more connected man, he misses being that guy. That's the thing he can't get over. He might not say it in so many words. He might not fully understand it. But when he lies awake at night or when he's with someone else who doesn't spark the same energy, there's this quiet longing, not just for you, but for how he felt around you, for who he was becoming. And even if it ended, especially if it ended without fireworks or anger, without chaos or drama, there's this subtle ache that follows him because you didn't leave destruction behind. You left growth. You left dignity. And in that, you left impact. That's why he can't let go, because you didn't represent a chapter in his life. You represented a turning point. And even if he didn't rise to meet it, even if he wasn't ready, that moment is still tattooed on it's still whispering to him, you were becoming better, you were evolving, you were closer to your truth. And no matter how many distractions he throws on top of that memory, no matter how many nights out, casual flings, ego strokes, he'll keep circling back in his mind. Because we don't forget the people who saw the real us. We don't forget the ones who made us believe we were more than we were settling for. So when he tries to move on, when he tells himself he's fine, that it's in the past, there's a part of him that still wonders who he might be today, if he'd grown into the man you saw. That's the part his mind won't let him forget. Let's talk about chemistry. Real chemistry, the kind that doesn't just light a spark, it changes the air in the room. The kind of connection where even silence feels full, where the way you looked at each other said more than 1,000 words could ever. That's the kind of bond that once felt is impossible to forget. And no matter how much someone tries to move on, no matter how many distractions they throw in the way, that feeling sticks. You see, when a man has experienced a genuine connection with someone, it's not just about what you did together. It's not about the dinners or the text messages or the vacations. It's about how you made him feel in his core. And here's the thing, those kinds of feelings aren't easily duplicated. He can swipe right 100 times. He can date someone new. He can try to fill the space with someone who ticks the same boxes. But eventually he'll realize something's missing. Because chemistry, that's not a checklist. It's not about shared interest or surface level compatibility. It's a rhythm and energy. It's the way your sarcasm bounced off his in a way that made the banter feel like a private language. It's the way you could be serious one moment and laughing the next. The way he felt more like himself with you than he does with most people, even when he wasn't trying. And once someone's felt that, it ruins them for anything less. Now here's where it gets even more real. When a man loses that kind of chemistry, especially if it ended before its time, his mind doesn't just move on, it compares. He'll meet someone new and in the beginning it will feel fresh, exciting, but deep down, he's running silent comparisons. He's looking for that same ease, that same high, that same comfort mixed with thrill that he had with you. And if it's not there, if the rhythm is off, if the laughter doesn't hit the same way, if the moments feel a little more forced, he starts to wonder if maybe what he had with you was rarer than he realized. And the more he tries to move forward without that same spark, the more he feels its absence. It's not something he always admits to himself right away. He might convince himself he's over it. He might even tell his friends it just didn't work out or we weren't right for each other. But those are just words. Because what's going on underneath is this subtle, persistent ache. A whisper of memory that creeps in when he's alone, that shows up in the quiet moments, in the songs that remind him of you, in the laughter that doesn't quite reach the same part of his heart. And sometimes the hardest part for him isn't even just the memory of you, it's the memory of how he felt around you, that lightness, that playfulness, that electricity. He might try to chase it again, but here's what makes this kind of chemistry so unforgettable. It wasn't created, it just happened. It wasn't manufactured by effort. It existed because of the unique alchemy between the two of you. And when he can't recreate that, no matter how hard he tries, he starts to understand that maybe, just maybe, it wasn't a common connection. Maybe it wasn't just timing. Maybe it was something more. Now, this is the part people don't talk about enough, because we always hear about moving on as if it's a decision, as if it's just about cutting off contact or deleting photos or distracting yourself with someone new. But the truth is, moving on isn't always about forgetting. Sometimes it's just burying, and buried feelings have a way of resurfacing, especially when you realize you've been trying to replace something that wasn't meant to be replaced. And for Chant, when a man feels a connection that was truly rare, doesn't matter how many people come after, none of them can rewrite what he already felt. That's why he thinks of you. That's why even if he doesn't reach out, even if he stays silent, there's still a part of his mind that loops back to the moments you shared. Because while time may dull the sharpness of memory, it doesn't erase meaning. He may forget the details of the day, but he won't forget how he felt in your presence. That kind of imprint, it lasts. And sometimes the cruelest part for him is realizing that what he's searching for, he already had, but maybe he didn't recognize it at the time, or maybe he wasn't ready to receive it fully. And that haunts him, because now when he meets someone new, he's not starting from scratch, he's starting with a standard, a memory, a chemistry that still lingers in the background of his mind, reminding him that not everything can be found again. He can try, he will try, but deep down, he knows real chemistry isn't reproducible. There's something about the stories that never quite got their ending, that stay with us the longest. You see, when something ends in chaos, when there's shouting, finality, drama, our minds close the chapter for us. It's done. There's no ambiguity. We may still hurt, but eventually we categorize that relationship, we process it, and we move on. But when someone exits our life with grace, without blame, without bitterness, when it ends not because of a lack of love, but because of timing or uncertainty or a quiet drift, it doesn't feel like the story is over. It feels like it's paused. And that's what haunts him. The human mind is wired to search for patterns, to complete stories, to find resolution. It hates the open loops. That's why unfinished conversations, unsaid truths, and unspoken feelings echo the loudest in our minds. So when he remembers you, he doesn't just